welcome to the Smarten Up show. We tend to use that expression a lot lately in our lives since we started doing the show.
Telling you, it's a whole bunch of people out there that need to, like now.
We're happy to be here on the Messianic Lamb Network, also YouTube, Facebook, and where else do we go?
Wherever else in space that we go.
In space. So we are very excited because we're seeing in Canada movement of parents and adults and people who care for children, and they're rising up, they're organizing, and they're starting to do something about what is happening. And it's a positive thing. And some days we say, well, did it have to get that bad for us to, to be more diligent? But you know what? The fact that it's happening is positive, and we just need to remember not to let it go bad before we become active. So today, on today's show, we want to talk to you about, like every week, we talk about parenting education, but we want to talk about more parental rights and parental responsibilities, because you cannot have one without the other.
Well, and just to give you an idea of the kind of opposition we're facing, the kind of government we're dealing with, Liberal government in Canada, you've probably heard of it, had a Ukrainian Nazi soldier that was honored in Parliament last week. Well, this is blown up, and now there's the Speaker of the House resigned, which was no brainer, but he's essentially, like on Yom Kippur yesterday, the scapegoat. Yes. All the sins of the government was confessed on him, and he took the fall for it. But there's a rising call for Trudeau to resign now, because of course he would have known about this. And the fact that they were honoring someone who, they had Zelensky in Parliament. Yeah. And so that he could, siphon more of our tax dollars to buy his chalet somewhere.
We know what's coming with his visit. There's more money leaving our country going towards weapons. So,
I got to get a pair of pajamas like him and just trot around the world and get billions of dollars all over the place for a cause. But the fact that, Canada would honor not only the president of this corrupt regime, but a man who, and they say they fought against the Russians. This guy actually fought against the Russians in World War II. Newsflash to everybody: Russia was our ally in World War II. They fought against the Nazis.
So there's two options. Either our government's that incompetent that they sincerely didn't know how to get information about this person and don't know how to make a good decision about who to invite in our parliament, or they knew and they're just so corrupt that they thought it's okay idea anyway. Pick your choice.
So, but what's really exciting is that we've got Christine Anderson coming soon. She's coming back to Canada, so she's the member of the European Parliament, and she has been quite vocal about her opinion of Trudeau.
Yes. So, and this wasn't meant to be a political thing, but I want, because this is what's in Canadian news today. But at the same time, and a little bit in the background, is the news about the fact that after September 20th, when we had demonstrations in several major cities and places.
Last Wednesday
in Canada. Obviously, our government did not respond in any way to the parents who were saying, we want more parental rights. I didn't hear talk about any laws being passed to protect the rights of the parents. I didn't hear any changes that were proposed as a result of so many parents coming out on the streets. And so,
well, we had the situation where Josh Alexander's younger brother. So Josh Alexander is the teen that got kicked out of.
It's a high school student kicked out of Catholic school because he believes that there's two genders. He believes in his Bible.
Right.
In Catholic school. Anyway.
So his younger brother was part of this protest, got injured at one of the rally. I think the rally was in Toronto, by the LGBTQT protesters,
which were purposefully informed that this is anti-LGBTQ protest rather than what it actually was, which is parental rights, and also really people not wanting their children to be sexualized and indoctrinated in something that is not their personal values.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, all this happened, and
so Josh's younger brother got injured. He got bopped in the head or something. He was bleeding.
And the veteran who was trying to protect him so he doesn't get even more hurt than what he was already bleeding from his forehead, that same veteran that was present there was arrested because he was interfering.
And so was Alexander. He was arrested.
Yeah.
16-year-old kid or something.
Nick Alexander.
Nick, 15, 16 years old. And he got arrested, even though he was the one that was hurt. And all he was doing is he was just standing there and saying, this is not against, like, he was just stopping the LGBTQ crowd because he wanted the parental protests, really the truth to be there. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So this is all happening. There were quite a few people who showed up who showed our government, local governments, provincial governments, that Canadians do not agree with what's being taught in schools, and parents want to keep their rights. They don't want to lose their rights and surrender them to the state. So that is happening. That's happened. The government did not respond anyway. It's like nothing happened. So Canadians are starting to feel like the government doesn't really care about their voice. Not starting, sorry, we've been feeling this way for quite a while. It's just that now there's more and more proof of that. Now, contrast to that, and what happened in our parliament, now obviously there's plans that convoys will be again coming together, and more people will be coming together because they still want to protect the children. It is not only what is being taught in schools, it's parental rights in the medical system, parental rights everywhere. And there's just so much more. Taking away our rights, period. This is just parents who started off as being concerned about their children, but it's really, now that the government didn't listen to that, they're concerned what else is being taken away in terms of our rights. And we know what the plans are. So there's nothing evident yet because there's little pockets of people here and there, but major streets in Toronto have been closed today. That is around Queen's Park, which is the provincial parliament. And they're just waiting for that convoy that hasn't even shown up. There's no evidence that will show up. So while we are preparing and blocking streets of the biggest city in Canada, we couldn't check out who came into our parliament to be guests, to be honored. We didn't know it was a Nazi. So. And it was, you could find out with a basic internet search. It's not like you needed to go onto the dark web or something like that.
So we are protecting ourselves against those parents who are coming to voice their opinion to the provincial government that they elected to represent them. But we didn't check out, nobody checked that there's a Nazi coming to be honored while we are meeting also Zelensky.
And everybody stood up and clapped for him too. It was wonderful that this guy was there.
So this is really making me concerned. Well, they just looked all like puppets. And you know what? But they're not the representatives of the people of this country the way they're supposed to be. They're listening, and we know WEF and Klaus Schwab has said that a big part of the Canadian Parliament is. They are members, and so people can call this conspiracy theory whatever they want, but that's the facts are there. They're not being hidden anymore. And our prime minister obviously is not taking responsibility that it's his job to check what's going on in Parliament, who enters. What if it was a terrorist? Well, I mean, our government has given money to terrorists already. Was it, from what country was it? That, I forget what was in the news, but there was money given to a man who was a terrorist. And
Zelensky.
No, there was another one from another country. But anyway, that's just different stories. So what I'm trying to get at, and how does it have to do with our show? There's strong police force to stop the parents from demonstrating for their parental rights. Yet our country is allowing Nazis to enter, people who just want money for weapons and more war. Um, you know, people are who have been known to be terrorists are given money, and yet no one in our government is willing to even acknowledge.
As a matter of fact, I think it was the city of Waterloo, which is about an hour west of Toronto. They're
Oh, they banned protests, parental protests. I think.
Yeah, they've either passed the bill or it's before them that says that parents can't protest the taking away of their rights and what's going on in the schools. You're not allowed to exercise your right of free speech in this country anymore. That's what they're telling us.
And actually, as September 20th was there, and then afterwards, follow-up articles were written. I was reading an article, and I forget where it was, so I have to go check again. But there was a person who paralleled what's happening right now in Canada with what George Orwell wrote in 1984. And in particular, it was excerpt from the book that spoke about the thought police.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I'm going to find the quote for another show, and I'm going to read that to you because it is so accurate. Everything is just to the letter of what George Orwell wrote. Mm-hmm. But the essence of that, I should have a drink of water. And I shared that with you, didn't I, about the thought police and mm-hmm. how they affect the family.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, Orwell's book was it was essentially predictive programming, and yes. He had, I think it was written in the 1940s, if I'm not mistaken, and about the dystopian future society. I mentioned actually something about one of the Ministry of Truth, and yes. The Ministry of Truth. I talked about this in one of my sermons earlier this year. And that in Orwell's Ministry of Truth, everything is backwards, everything is a lie, everything that you hear. And it's everywhere in government around you. What you're being told is not the truth.
Well, and currently our Canadian government is pretty much sponsoring all the major media outlets.
Yep.
So anyway, in 1984, it describes how the thought police was encouraging parents to form natural, love and affection for their children while they're teaching the children to, to spy on their parents and to report their parents if their parents believed or said anything that came against whatever the government was, the big brother was telling them to believe and to say. And so what they were doing is they were obviously encouraging parents to be parents to their children, but then they were training how the children to
betray the parents.
And so really, because you cannot spy in every household, right? You cannot, as good gadgets and things get and technology gets, the best way is really the reporting to come from the inside. Mm-hmm. And so that's a plan. And this is why this indoctrination in schools and media and libraries and all kinds of public places is happening. And there has been recordings from a school after June 1st, when Pride Month was introduced in the schools here. And a lot of parents chose to keep their children at home because they don't agree with that. They don't agree that that has to do anything with school. So why would my child go to school to learn something that I don't think belongs in school?
Right.
And so there were recordings of teachers who were essentially shaming children who were not present on June 1st for the introduction of Pride Month. And so that one particular teacher that was recorded also said, you need to go back to your parents and tell them that they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them that what they believe is wrong and that doesn't belong in our country. How much does that sound like 1984? By the way, 1984 was written around 1948, and he kind of swapped the numbers. I believe that was kind of the little neat fact about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right after World War II. He's writing this book. George Orwell is writing this book, and it's taken not. We still have Nazis alive today because they appeared in our parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that long since it happened that we are going back, but now it's coming worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're destroying family fabric, family unity, family. Some people are surprised that in Christianity and family is really a holy unit, a holy place. Like it's one of the things, one of the plans of God. It's part of God's plan. It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is being destroyed. So all these years ago, at least family was intact and wasn't destroyed to the extent it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And so George Orwell writes how one day in the future, children are going to be then spying on their parents and betraying their parents and reporting their parents.
Yeah.
So it has already started in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Children are now being told to tell their parents that what they believe is wrong and they need to change their mind and to oppose their parents and disrespect and disregard their heritage, their values,
Mm-hmm.
And just really have no respect for the people who brought them to this world, who cared for them, and did whatever parents do for their children. So this is a beginning stage of where now children are not. And we have seen, I have seen, and you have seen documents that are presented to school boards, to teachers, how to guide a child to keep secrets from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty much, children are told that they should be picking their own gender, pronouns, maybe different name, and that name should be more important to anyone in the school system than their birth name, and whether the parents agree with that or not.
Mm-hmm.
And parents have kind of caught up on that, though, because sometimes when they would talk to a teacher or some documentation would be there and the child's chosen name would be there. And the parents would ask, well, what is this? That's not my child's name. So this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we emphasize in all our shows is that God is exposing it.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you believe in God again or not, that is the only ally you want to be fighting this.
Mm-hmm.
And God is exposing it. So no matter what plans are being made, and as we see in 1984, it's come to fruition.
Yeah.
It cannot succeed because it will be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
It will be exposed. So knowing what's coming, being written in books, being written in articles, the parents starting to see what's happening. I guess we wanted to talk today about, well, what is the parent's responsibility in this time? We want rights, but rights come with responsibility.
Yeah.
We don't just get rights as a gift and then do nothing to keep those rights and to be deemed worthy of those rights. And also the other thing is that we wanted to talk about that is the cost of keeping your rights and your freedoms.
Yeah, and where we have arrived at in society is that because we have allowed these rights to be encroached upon for so long, that they're now being flagrantly and blatantly taken away from us. I mean, they're not even trying to couch it anymore. They're telling you flat out, you don't have a right to this. You've got the governor of New Mexico who is saying that she's going to take away the right of people to have guns. And even though that is a violation of the the Constitution. I mean, the Second
Yeah.
Amendment and the United States was specifically put there so that you could fight against a tyrannical government. That's the very reason why the Second Amendment was put in. And this governor in New Mexico, she says, for health purposes. Because
bullets are not healthy, or
well, no, because you've had school shootings, you had mall shootings, and everything else. And
okay,
so she's saying, for the sake of public health, she is now restricting the right to take away guns. And I think it was like a CNN reporter and said, you can't do that. That's a bit. Well, we're going to try. It is basically what she said.
And they will, and absolutely
they will keep going. So what's happened is we've now gotten to the point where they're openly telling you that your rights, which were enshrined in the Constitution of the government, which we consider to be God-given rights, they don't consider you to have those, and they're going to take it away. But because we have allowed them to take it away to that point,
we haven't resisted enough.
So now what's happened is that now people are starting to wake up. If you have something taken away from you, it's a lot harder to get it back than to keep it when it's in your possession.
Yeah.
If a thief has stolen something from you, you got to chase that sucker down.
Getting it back, rather than keeping them at the door before they come into your house.
That's right.
So we're not here to to say, oh, guns are good or whatever. That's not the point. The point is, all these things are symptoms of what's happened to society. And I've been telling you, my experience as immigrant here in Canada over 30 years ago. We did come from communist regime, and as we were starting to settle in this country and going through the paperwork process and just kind of figuring out what our rights are and what the law is and where we fit in, we started quickly recognizing that here in Canada, so that was 30 years ago, you had rights and everything was allowed and you were welcomed and so forth, but they were a lot of restrictions of how the process was going to go. And there were all these conditions. And soon we realized, hey, we come from a country where the government told you, no, you can't do this, or no, this is what we're going to do to you. It was very overt and in your face. And we realized here was through different laws and restrictions, you were being
controlled.
You're being controlled and restricted. You were told that you have rights, but then you have to fit this criteria, and then you have to do this paperwork. So we realized it's a very roundabout way your rights and freedom was being restricted. And we said, at least we knew our government, what they did back home in Eastern Europe. Well, guess what? Your government's telling you now here what they're doing. The problem is that because they haven't been doing so, you don't believe that they really mean it. They mean it. So someone who comes from a communist country where the government told them that, they mean it. They did everything they said they would do. And all these plans that were outlined into the, the Communist Manifesto in the U.S., not Parliament, but Congress, right? Parliament's here in Canada. In U.S. Congress, and what George Orwell wrote in 1984, and what is happening, what our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he seems like he's this madman speaking nonsense. No, it's a very specific plan that he's outlining what he's going to do. Just because he is not taking responsibility and facing the people when they ask him about all these things he's saying, doesn't mean that he is not moving forward with us.
Well, and the funny thing is as this whole thing has erupted now in Parliament and the opposition, who all stood there and clapped for this Nazi.
Everybody did.
But now that it's come to light is exactly what was going on.
Foolish. Oopsie.
Ooh, and so now they're using this political opportunity. But the one thing that in Canadian Parliament, you have what's called question period.
Yeah.
And so you have different politicians who will go back and forth, and they'll ask, they'll speak to one another through the Speaker of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, my wife has done this, and when's she going to ask, when's she going to apologize is how they work.
Yeah.
And so this is what's going on. And Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, got up and says, "Where's the Prime Minister? He wasn't even in Parliament
there for that
to
day.
answer the questions." So
Yeah.
the Speaker of the House falls on the sword. But Trudeau knew full well what this was all about. He is the one that was standing there next to Zelensky, and he didn't even have the guts. I mean, the man is such a coward. Oh my goodness.
So
this is the type of government that we're dealing with, and these
so
are the ones
stop
who are
relying on that.
and these are the ones that are after your kids.
So stop relying on the fact that if you probably demonstrate enough, if you have enough, and listen, you know what? I think this is a good thing, because I think at least when people come out and do demonstrations, at least people will see that there are a lot of people who feel this way, who are not happy with the government, because our government's paying the media to tell them, no, this is just a minority. Like they have they have extreme beliefs, and all these parents are now Nazis and bigots and white supremacists. Yeah. And
the Liberal Party actually called a couple of Jewish members of Parliament Nazis.
Yeah. So so at this point it's just calling names and so forth. But that's why we're saying don't believe the media and what the government is saying right now. See what's happening on the streets. See what's happening on your community. So go ahead and demonstrate, because we are also inspiring the world. We're inspiring others to take action. So action has to be taken. But that is just the beginning of the action, the forefront of the wave that needs to come in, because there's other things that need to be done. And one of the things that needs to be done is to stop participating in the system that our government is functioning in. They obviously don't care about your demonstrations, about your opinion, about I know there are a lot of petitions, parental petitions, that are going to the government, asking that our money, we have control of where our tax money goes, because right now in Canada we can only assign it to public schools or to Catholic schools.
Right.
We have a lot of private schools in this country. We have a lot of different religious schools, not just Catholic.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are homeschooling. So there's petition that people want to be able to assign their money to wherever their child's actually getting an education.
Yeah.
Though I think that that's something parents can do to take action, our government has shown how much they want to listen. It is what we have to say.
It is going to, and you think back to let's say the Solidarity movement in Poland. Mm-hmm. When did that start? That started 1980, 1979, 1980.
Yeah, so communalism's been there already for a while.
No, but it took 10 years of demonstrations before the Iron Curtain finally fell. Yeah. Communism finally fell in 1991 when the Berlin Wall came down, because that was the ultimate symbol.
Final, yes.
And so the Solidarity movement under Lech Walesa started in around 1980. It took 11 years of hundreds of thousands. There were millions of people that were out on the streets, and there were many who were whisked away. Many were killed. They were never seen again. Because when you go up against a tyrannical regime, it is going to use all of its resources in order to crush you.
Yeah.
And the problem is that in North America, people here don't have the fighting spirit. They don't have the strength. They don't have the will and the resources to come against something like that. They figure showing up to this protest and waving a flag or something like that. No. You don't understand.
This is the beginning. It's like we need to gather with one another and support one another. But it also became information came through that Justin Trudeau is spending $100 million, $101 million, to fund the indoctrination, because he says it's for the LGBTQ community, but it is really not. It is for the indoctrination of children and separating them from their parents, because a lot of that money is going toward, he said, local organizations, but really places that are going to help the children to choose something, to change who they are without their parents' consent and knowledge. So the government is putting money to go against the parents.
Yeah.
And so yes, people are becoming organized, and but we have to understand that what we are having to overcome, what we are having to fight against, is quite organized, as it became obvious through the different union rep Zoom meeting, anticipating that parent demonstration. Why are they so worried if it's just a minority of parents that are like just squawking in the sidelines? Why did they have to come? The biggest unions in the entire country had to come together and mobilize all their people to come against a small little parent,
a fringe
minority kind of extremist parents, like a really small proportion of parents who are just going to come and demonstrate.
Yeah.
Why so much money, manpower, and time was spent to come? Is it because it's really the small proportion?
It's the unions and the militants that have the fringe minority with the unacceptable views. But the problem is that they're the ones who dominate all the positions of power and in the government.
So again, the system within which our government is functioning is not to be trusted anymore.
No.
And we're not to participate in it
The
anymore.
only solution, to be honest with you, is a complete overhaul of the system. The entire political system that we have needs to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up, because it doesn't represent us anymore.
No, it doesn't. So I wanted us to go to, again, parental rights, and parental responsibilities. So as we are running our school pods, we have been speaking to a lot of parents. And we love doing that because some of the stories that we hear are heartbreaking of how children are suffering in the school system for many reasons: overcrowding, not having enough trained professionals to deal with children's special needs, bullying in schools because of that polarization in our society. Just so many reasons, medical reasons, and so forth. So there are a lot of stories we're hearing from parents, which is good. Realizing that there's an issue is the first step to finding a solution. But what is the solution? Now the homeschool community has increased exponentially over the last 3 years.
Right.
A lot of people were forced really to homeschool during COVID, and some of them chose to continue doing that now that the schools have reopened. And this is great. But I don't think this homeschool community is ready to support these people who have come into this because they had to. You see, we have started homeschooling. We started 7-8 years ago now. And it was a choice that we made because of our beliefs. There was no real pressure, well, other than Kathleen Wynn's sex education that came through and was forced into our schools. At that time, you could still opt out of that.
Right.
You actually could still pull your kid out, and the kids were actually sent home on those days or kept out of classes. We chose to do that because we kind of could see where this was going. But lately, the parents who have come into homeschooling, they're really reacting to something that's happened to them. Tragic, really, that's happened. At first, it was the masking, vaccinating, and segregating of their children due to medical reasons for their well-being and health. While that kind of was pulled out of schools, though there's still talk. And I have to tell you, it was just a few months ago, I saw there was an article about high school students who were not happy about the fact that the scheduling in high schools never went back to the way it was before in terms of the the way the courses were going to be taken, either semester or full year courses. So now they have quadmesters, like they're chopping up the school year into, and so kids are high school kids are having to take their courses into quarter of the time that they would normally have. So they don't feel that that's enough time for them to really process and understand the material that they're being taught, so they could be successful. So they parents and high school students are starting to ask the Minister of Education, can we now go every, like a lot, big percent of families got vaccinated because they wanted to go back to normal. They wanted to reopen our community and society. So they're saying, we did this. Why are we not going back to that schedule?
Mm-hmm.
And our Minister of Education here in Ontario, Stephen Ledges, said, well, not everyone's vaccinated yet. We still need more, we need 100% vaccination in order to do that. That was said at a time when the World Health Organization pronounced that there's no longer pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So I just ask, why are we holding the children hostage and messing with their schedules and not giving them the best opportunity and saying that they need to be vaccinated in order for them to get what they want, when there's no longer pandemic officially on a world scale? Just some questions for parents here and people who are listening to ask themselves and start looking into that. So no, there is no freedom. A lot of parents, I know here in Ontario, are receiving letters that their children will be suspended from school if their vaccination passports are not up to date. What does the vaccination status have to do with child's education? And why are we punishing a child's education if the parents have chosen? And there's still exemptions that you can sign, that you're still by law allowed to give those, but the children will still, there will be bullying in schools for that.
Huge amount. And you signing an exemption really doesn't mean anything anymore, because they just do an end run. There is such contempt for parents within the school boards now, within both the teachers and the administrators and the school councils, that they kick you out of meetings if you disagree with them.
Right. So which leads me to one of the solutions. And by the way, just to finish the vaccination thing. So those who believe in vaccines are vaccinated, then they are protected if they believe in that protection. Why does somebody else who doesn't believe in it have to get vaccinated if they don't believe in the way it works? It's just, again, we are being turned against one another to force the other ones to surrender their rights.
And this is happening in, families all over the place too.
Yeah.
That certain family members believed, other family members didn't, and the ones who did believe in getting the jab forced the other family members to go get it. Otherwise, they threatened they wouldn't see them. And I've heard a story about grandparents who were threatened by their kids. You don't get to see your grandkids unless you get shot.
So 1984, the family now gets to control the family members. So that is one of the things that is happening. So one of the solutions I saw on different chats being proposed, that if you believe that we can redeem our public school system and you as the parent want to have influence, then parents are encouraged to be active on student councils. Because if you want to make a difference, you being the only person on on parent council, not student council, on parent council, if you're the only one of your opinion, then you will not make a difference in that school. But if more people who believe in parental rights and want to stand up for them, if they join parent council, then perhaps policies will reflect the opinions of the parent council. But only one or two individuals will not do it. So it is time now to act as a group, not as individuals.
And one of the problems that we have been finding within the protest freedom movement is that you have a bunch of different agendas and people wanting to do their own thing. there's no cohesiveness.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when it comes to pods, is that what's happened is parents went from having no say whatsoever and no real interest in what was going on with their kids, aside from a select few.
It was easy to
Drop your kid off at
allow
school or
someone to do that.
right.
And if you trust it, why not? But
And 30, 40 years ago, it was trustworthy. I
yeah,
mean, you were guaranteed that your kids were going to get some semblance of an
but
education.
slowly parental voice was taken away from parents.
Yes.
And so now parents didn't even know how to make decisions when all of a sudden they had to homeschool their kids.
Yep.
I mean, there was panic.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be, because you know your child. You can homeschool your child. You can teach them. You teach them all the time. You teach them how to wash, how to do things around the house. You can teach them other things.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just symptomatic of what's happened. So parents were not used to making decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's an opportunity for parents to make decisions. Well, what's happening?
Yeah.
Everyone is starting to now want their way being
Yeah.
done. I want a voice, and I want it to happen my way. So now we need to. So pendulum's kind of swinging from I have no say to I get to say what everything.
Yeah, dictate.
Every aspect.
I want to, and what they're saying is that we want to customize this to the last little detail about what we want it to look like. We want to determine, how many boys and girls, at least they're only choosing boys and girls, but, the age range and how many kids. And so all of these things.
Which days of the week. And
right.
So, and this is something we want to have flexibility on, but ultimately we need to keep, how do we turn that off? We need to keep the important things important. So what is the goal here? For us to get what we want, which if we work as a society and as a community with one another, we will.
Yes.
If we care about what the person next to us wants and we work together, then we will. But if we want to get our way, then nobody's going to get what they want. So that is just one of the things we need to learn right now.
Well,
as a homeschool community, as a parental community, as a society.
Any kind of community requires the sacrifice of the individual for the benefit of the many.
Yeah.
Now, the government is using that against us. With, for instance, the whole vaccination thing that, you have to give up your individual medical rights for the protection of everybody. Whether it was true or not, it still doesn't matter. The taking away of individual rights.
We have to watch out. What is it going to cost for us to be protected?
Yeah. But when it comes to the building of a community, everybody's got to be willing to roll up their sleeves and to sacrifice and to get it done no matter what. And so if I don't get what I want here, then you know what, maybe that's not all that important that we get this if we get this going, because community does not get built if everybody's sitting around waiting for the perfect conditions.
Well, yes, we have to create and build. So it's time for building. It's time for working together with one another. It is time to really understand what's important. What is the important thing at this point? And I wanted to talk a little bit about cost. Take it in a financial way or any other way, because there's always a cost to what we want to have.
Mm-hmm.
So our taxes are paying for public or Catholic school. And if you make any other choice, then there's a cost. Now,
I'll be back in 1 second.
Sounds good. Now, the cost of sending your child to public or a Catholic school, I think a lot of parents are starting to see is separation of the family, parents from children, encouraged to keep secrets and so forth. There's psychological, physiological, different kind of costs that are associated with that. Now, on the other end, if you do not use those schools where your taxes are already going to automatically, and we were just talking about, even if you're a retired person, your children are grown up, if you have grandchildren, some of your tax dollars is going to schools.
Mm-hmm.
You just automatically designate it to that. So If you choose to withdraw from the system, what is the cost? Well, if you choose to homeschool your own children, the cost is the one parent's salary.
Mm-hmm.
That one parent that has to stay home. Now, a lot of people who have homeschooled for quite a while, they have found different ways to still work part-time, or maybe parents kind of alternate shifts and things like that so that they could be with their children at one point or another. But there's always loss in wages
Mm-hmm.
so that you can spend time. And especially if you want to give your children wonderful experiences, opportunities, it takes time. It takes time to put a program, something fun and exciting and educational for them, positive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So that's homeschooling. Uh, Parents in a homeschool community can help one another. But ultimately, this is where the parent takes responsibility and takes the time. Now, if you choose to be part of if you send your child to a private school because you can't homeschool and you want another school to do that for you, well, here in Canada, costs for private school, so on the low end is about $1,000 a month per child. And on the high end, I don't even know how high it goes on the high
Well, it
end.
depends on how exclusive, but you've got private schools that could be $40,000-$50,000 a year.
Yes. So,
So you're looking at $4,000 or $5,000 a month.
right. So it depends, obviously, in highly specialized schools, what you're looking for, which is fine. You know, that is a decision people can make depending on how important it is to them, what is really important to them. Okay, so realistically, with today's economy, we know a lot of people are saying, well, that is not realistic for the majority. And it is true. So, and this is where we've offered pods, where we've made it quite reasonable and where parents share cost.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, in order for things to cost less, we need to have some kind of involvement. We have to work with the community. But one way or another, it's going to cost you. Homeschool curriculum costs money. I know I've purchased homeschool curriculum for the full school year. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars. I mean, it could go up to $1,000 a curriculum for each child, you know. So, and then in addition to the wages that you've lost, I mean, you're probably paying what a private school would cost you. Now, you know, you can make things work buying used curriculums and again, working with other parents to share teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's dependent on people coming together as a community and giving a little before they take.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to start with our thinking. What is important to us? Are we going to tolerate our children being in the system that doesn't want to hear our opinions? So do we want psychological and strains in our relationships? Because homeschoolers, sometimes they have good relationships and sometimes that's not working out. I think we need to appreciate the options that are given to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to take the time. What are our values? To really understand what are our values? What are our beliefs? What do we think is the solution? How are we going to help that solution? What can we do about it? Remember that week when I talked about what is it, the circle of influence or the circle of control? We have to really define for ourselves as parents what that is.
Mm-hmm.
What do we want for our children? What can we do personally about that? Could I maybe have my child learn with a couple of kids that are maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older? Would I be okay? Is it such a big deal if my child, you know, is learning not the days that are the best for me, you know, but still has some days during the week that they're learning with another group of kids?
What it comes down to is that everybody, when it comes to these situations, needs to take a step back and say, what is the overall objective? Because what ends up happening is people start drilling down into the minutia and the details about things and start getting nitpicky about it. Whereas they're not recognizing that the overall objective is to rescue our kids.
What's the alternative? to you working in a homeschool group or a school pod or whatever group that forms.
Your kid goes to school and gets indoctrinated with stuff that violates the values of the vast majority of people in society.
So please read the Communist Manifesto. What year was it presented in?
It was read in U.S. Congress in 1963.
1963.
There was a 45-point plan for the communist takeover of the United States.
So,
and the vast majority of those points, the 45 points, have already been accomplished.
Yes. So, it is not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's not something far off in the future that may or may not happen and seems like strange ideas. It is happening.
The difference between a conspiracy theory and reality is approximately 3 months.
Well, I think when George Orwell wrote 1984, people thought, oh, well, this is dystopian. It's not going to really happen. It's figment of his imagination. It is not. It no longer is.
No, and as from what I can't verify this, I haven't checked into it, but Orwell might have been an occultist who knew. I saw a video yesterday, and someone was looking at the words from the Red Hot Chili Peppers song "Californication," which came out about 25 years ago. And if you listen to all of the words of that song, it was telling you every single thing that is happening now
on a spiritual and other levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's frighteningly accurate because a lot of the stuff hadn't been put in place yet. Now, how did Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer, and the rest of the Chili Peppers know this? Well, Kiedis was at an award show, I guess, about 3-4 years ago, and he thanked Satan. I want to thank Satan.
Yeah.
And then he thanked a bunch of Freemasons too. So he's in the club. And so what that band and many, many of the others are doing is it's called predictive programming. They're telling you what they're going to do.
And we're being distracted because it's meant to be entertainment. So this is how you're kind of allowed not to take it seriously.
Yeah, because you got to listen really hard to hear the words of that song.
It doesn't speak very clearly, but
and it's said really fast.
But it's passed on as art.
Yes,
it's passed on as something. Oh, it's just like a creative mind thinking. But it is not just that. The way it's presented to you is very creative, but not what's the contents of it. It's a plan. It is a plan. So without going too deep and far into this, so parents have the obligation to start looking into these things, even if something sounds like stranger than fiction type of thing, strange fiction or some strange notion. Start looking into it. Start asking questions. You still can use the internet to find things out. There's still a lot of networks that you can turn to. And listen, when somebody presents me with some new idea, I go look at one side of the issue and I go look at writing on the other side of the issue. We need to start practicing critical thinking skills, but we have to start paying attention to what's happening right around us. Mindfulness right now is very popular, and mindfulness is being present in the moment. But let's look at it not from only philosophical point of view. Let's look at it from realistic point of view. What does this mean to me? How is this going to affect my life? How is that going to affect my community, my family, my society? Do I want this to go any further? If it's going in this direction, do I want it to go any further? So I urge parents, if they want to be part of parent councils, do so. Because then you will know, you'll be informed. Do not just listen to people's opinions and people's, ideas about stuff. Go and find out first person accounts and sources and experiences. Go ahead. But I think the more you look into this, you'll find out that action needs to be taken now.
For sure. And so if you have any questions, you can visit the website, schoolpodscanada.com. We will set these up wherever you are. If there's enough people who are committed to getting one started, we've got a plan in place, we've got a structure in place. We'll help you get the education your kids deserve and give you a voice in it. We have to understand, it's for the betterment of all society, not just for the individuals. And so on that note, we wish everybody a happy Feast of Tabernacles, which will be coming Friday night. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, right back here on LAM Network, our YouTube channel, Facebook group, Smarten Up, Biblical Education Principles. Have a great week.
Good seeing you. Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.